Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, where you are across this great wide world of ours. I'm going to continue this discussion concerning the Bureau of Indian Affairs. From this forward, I'm going to refer to it as the BIA. And I had someone reach out to me today, and also yesterday, and a couple of days prior to that, about uh, about the situation on a lot of the reservations and why that I feel so strongly about the BIA and how this whole situation with this distrust of the federal government has led to issues concerning not all indigenous people, but a majority of indigenous have this mistrust of the federal government. And I've said this before, and as a psychologist, part of this is this historical trauma. And what I mean by historical trauma is that events that happened in the past. Case in point, we can talk about Tecumseh, who, in the War of 1812, fought with the British on the side of the British to gain part of the lands back in the old Midwest territory, which was at this time Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, Wisconsin, Illinois. And the goal by Tecumseh was to get a federation of Native Americans together so that they could live in their own harmony without white settlers' approachment onto their land. And the goal here with Tecumseh was trying to create a confederacy of Native Americans to fight back the onslaught of the American colonists into the Ohio Valley, and this led to many skirmishes. Case in point, the War of 1812. He sided with the British, and at some point he thought that they would get some of the land back. And one of the generals, and his name escapes me right now, ended up loving the support of Native Americans of such as Tecumseh. But as the war waned on by 1815, and then with the battle at Thames, this really reflected the onslaught of how Native Americans not only at that point distrusted the American colonists, but at the point the British turned their back on Tecumseh and left many issues concerning, and excuse me here, the light here is too bright here, left many of the left many of the uh, historical drama to unfold. This would also take place, like I said, when we talk about the Trails of Tears. Uh, Chief Justice Marshall agrees that when the Cherokee, the five civilized tribes of Cherokee, cannot be forced off their land, and with Andrew Jackson, he did not follow suit of the Supreme Court, and more or less he went against the Supreme Court. If this would have happened in modern times, this would have been an impeachable uh, act. But the fact of the matter is, his one comment was, "Let Marshall's court reinforce me forcing people off the line." And what should have happened at that point, Congress, in which they did not interact, which would have been Congress, and the Senate should have stepped in and said, "You need to follow the order of Chief Justice Marshall." Ensuing that this didn't occur, then the Trail of Tears called in the 1830s. And also, we have the Indian Removal Act, the formation of the Bureau of Indian Affairs in the 1830s, which later forced many of the Native American people or indigenous people off the reservation lands and moved west of the Mississippi, which ensued as time would go on in the 1850s with the formation of the Manifest Destiny and Thomas Jefferson's approach of saying 40 acres and a mule. What we find out is that the Americans are settled, and this mentality from American colonials now becomes 48 lower states, which ensued would not force more Native Americans off lands, and then would isolate them on areas that were isolated from further white settlements. Then we have what occurs Wounded Knee in the 1890s, another historical event that occurs. We have the Dawes Act, and so on and so on and so on. And so what emerges in the mentality, and I'm saying the mentality of many Native Americans at this time, is the fact that the issue becomes we're not getting anywhere. We're regressing backwards. So in the point that I make out of this, with the formation of the Bureau of Indian Affairs, of the BIA, the cornerstone of this existed on the fact that it's supposed to be an establishment of federal government helping Native Americans or indigenous people that exist in the lower 48 states. And in actuality, what it more or less does is it causes more broken treaties, issues on starvation, isolation occurs. Then we get into the early 20th century. You have issues concerning water quality on some of these reservations because they're using testing sites for nuclear weapons, especially in New Mexico, and so on, so on, and so on. And so the issue becomes more in this. So part of this piecemeal, as I always say, that it comes out of this is in the 1980s, is the formation of the casinos, or in other words, that a tribe can form a casino on the reservation, and that way they can get land or get revenue from casinos. Excuse me, but the purposes of this, and this is in one of my books, Don't Buy the Lottery Ticket. This becomes a false hope, even though many of these tribes develop first casinos, then the gaming issues become, and then you got to bring in gaming rights. And what it comes out of this is they don't get as much revenue as expected. Just the same thing with the lotteries, state lotteries. The state lotteries, like in Ohio, under Governor Gilligan, was supposed to help with education. And let's face it, how has that paid off in the last 20, 30 years? Still low scores, etc. So the issue for me is that the lottery is a poor person's game, and not necessarily gives a false pretense for people to spend their money on something with, in actuality, they should be trying to use money to save. So, and that's another argument for another day. But my point that I make out of this is when the formation of the BIA was founded, then the issue should have been that we need to move things forward to the 21st century, get rid of the BIA, and come up with a system that empowers more Native Americans and Native American tribes. And the point out of this is the people that know best on the reservation or the leadership on the reservations, and not necessarily the federal government. And I'm a big component that right now I think the federal government's broke in many ways. And when you have 12 regional offices and main offices in Washington, D.C., I don't think it's as efficient of a system that the ideal or the premise of helping Native Americans existed then, but the BIA right now has become more of a monster and not really helping the people, and the mistrust that comes out of this generates more mistrust because the fact of the matter is the BIA goes all the way back into the 1830s, and we have current things like in the 1830s, 40s, 50s, et cetera, et cetera. So, and like I said, wounded knee, we have issues that occur, that sovereignty issues, water rights. Water rights are another issue in itself. And when it comes to that issue, tribal leadership or tribal lands are the ones that are left under, or at the bottom of the resource for that when it comes to agriculture, city uses. So it's more of part of that police power, the good and quality for the many of people, as long as you're not Native American or poor. And so this issue, it has breathed itself in the BIA, and it needs to come up with a system that is more Native American friendly and more attuned to what's going on in the 21st century. What's the old cliche? Uh, uh, when what's the definition of stupidity? Doing the same thing over and over and over again, and expecting different results, and it's not going to happen. And even though we have, uh, during the COVID, they had high, death rates, high sickness, due to the fact that there was limited hygiene because of the fact that there wasn't a really reliable source of a clean water source on many of these reservations, which goes back to my water quality on the reservations issue. So here again, that goes to the issue of the BIA. Are they being a hindrance, or are they being more of a, or trying to help people, namely Native American indigenous people, better their lives? We got high unemployment, high dropout rate in high school, feeling of hopelessness, drug addiction. We got issues of, spousal abuse, children abuse, which are above the national averages across many of these areas. And this is all under the head of the BIA, which, in tech and in source, we're really not solving the problem. It's the other cliche I say, we're just kicking the can down the road, and somehow maybe we'll make the system better. So anyway, that's my big beef about the BIA right now. And this is an election year, and I'm trying to get this message out because really I'm trying to get this to get a foothold, and that we can get the awareness out and make a change that is more positive for indigenous people across the 50 states of the United States. Not even in this, but also in the Western Hemisphere, because this is all of this came about during with Columbus and Cortez, namely about native indigenous people. Anyway, if you like what I'm saying, please like and subscribe to my channel. Feel free to reach out to my books. I got self-published books. I'm almost finishing another book called Abundance. I should have that finished sometime this week. I also have, like I said, the latest book was in the fall, Water Quality on the Reservation, and also Don't Buy the Lottery Ticket. All these books are available on Amazon in the self-published area. It's because I feel that self-publishing and get the message out is critical. Anyway, folks, I will talk to you next week and hope to have you have a great week, and we'll be talking to you soon. Thanks. Have a great day. Bye.